Hello, everybody. Welcome to the May 2022 edition of Angular DC. Today, I have with me Paul joining us from North Carolina, I believe.
Yes. Hi.
Welcome, Paul. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thank you. Today's a bit rainy out here where I'm at. So, how's the weather on your side of the world, which is exactly the same side?
Yeah, it's the same. It's we got a lot of rain yesterday. Today is kind of gloomy outside as well. So hopefully it clears up a little bit by the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today, Paul. I will let's chat a few minutes, I guess, about a bit about your background and why you want to talk about NX.
Yeah. So like you said, I'm from North Carolina. My name's Paul. I've been doing Angular since it was in beta. So company I was at, we had a WYSIWYG type of editor for web pages, and it was written in Silverlight. And so Silverlight, it being going out of commission, we decided to write with it in Angular, and we started with Angular JS, but just ran into some issues with that, so we went to Angular when it was in beta. So kind of just been heads on doing Angular for what, about 7 years now. And a couple years ago, I got into NX, and I thought that the way the opinionation of if that's a word, the opinionated nature of NX and kind of fit with my mindset and with Angular, and kind of just giving us those guardrails to kind of set the code bases up in a maintainable way, I thought was super helpful.
Yeah, I definitely remember the good old Silverlight days. I definitely delivered a few solutions using Silverlight, and it's funny. It really took until, I want to say, Angular 4 to live up to that original kind of promise of Silverlight, where it was just such a pleasant experience in my view, to develop using those tools. So yeah, I'm glad, and I'm really happy to have Angular in the arsenal of tools to deliver kick-ass applications.
Absolutely.
So what do you prefer as your user control library?
I usually do material, Angular material, and I've my previous company I've been doing. We were doing ionic work, so that's kind of just jumping ahead of things. That's going to be our workshop today a little bit. We're going to be using Angular material and using the ionic components. So for the native kind of look and feel. But I've enjoyed those two. I like probably them more than I've played around with Prime NG as well, and Clarity's component library. But I always go back to Angular material. I feel like.
Yeah, it's kind of a pared down set of user controls, but I really like their high quality nature, and of course, Ionic is pretty awesome as well for developing cross-platform applications.
Yeah.
And I guess I've also been recommending Kendo UI because of their integrated grid solution. That's where I feel usually where people feel like they need to bring in additional libraries is when they need a robust grid control.
Yep.
And I am not a huge fan of bringing in several different controls from various projects. It becomes a maintenance nightmare in the long term. So from that perspective, I like Kendo UI.
Cool. I've never tried it. I'll have to take a peek at it. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, and having support is always good as well. Being able to submit support tickets. All right. Well, thank you, Paul. Before you go on here, let me go through our Meetup intro. All right. So Welcome, everybody. Today's event is subject to our code of conduct, as usual. Please give a look at that on our GitHub page. And we thank our Meetup sponsor, Excella. We are hiring, including fully remote positions. Please check out excella.com/careers. And in terms of community announcements, Angular 14 release is imminent, so definitely prime your engines and be ready to upgrade. Some nice features are on the way, like standalone components, and hopefully we'll schedule some talks regarding some of the new features about Angular 14. With that said, our next event is TBD, so please DM me on Twitter if you'd like to give a talk. We're still working on our Google Docs form, so it's better if you just DM me. That's actually how we scheduled Paul. And further, if you're interested in more Angular meetups, check out Angular community on meetup.com. They always have great Angular talks around the world across multiple time zones. So it's a great meetup hosted by the same folks who organize NGConf. And if you're hiring, looking for a job, or anything else, please feel free to mention those on the comments, and please engage with our speaker throughout the event using the comments, and I will relay those messages to Paul. And further, at this, stick to the end because we have a giveaway. We thank Wallaby.js for sponsoring our meetup here. We're gonna give one Wallaby.js license and one Quokka.js license. And Wallaby has some great tools. They for running your unit tests within your IDE, or having a REPL environment for your TypeScript code or JavaScript code right within Visual Studio Code. I'm personally a fan of Quokka. Definitely give it a try. So it's a great set of tools. So at the end of the meetup, I'll ask if you or throughout the meetup, please in the chat say that you want to be part of the raffle. And at the end, I will draw your name using a random tool. We'll do it live here to avoid any shenanigans. And then I'll send you your license. All right. Today we have Paul. Actually, I just realized, Paul, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Yes, it's a little bit of a hard one. It's Mojica, like
Okay.
last of the Mohicans.
All right. So today we have Paul Mojica here. He will be talking to us about separating business logic from UI presentational logic using NX. And he is a senior software engineer at LangGate, hailing from Charlotte, North Carolina, and he's happily married with 2 kids. And he's an Angular veteran. So I'm really looking forward to this talk and learning about Paul's experiences. And with that, sir, let me go ahead and turn this banner off, and then I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Dogan.
Right.
Dohan, sorry.
No problem.
Right. Let me. You're able to see my screen, perfect. So let me go ahead and I'll bring up my my presentation here. Let's go ahead and let me just hit play here. Sorry. Okay. So we're going to talk about like Dohan said, we're going to talk about sharing code using NX. My name is Paul Mojica. I'm a senior software engineer at LangGate. Been developing Angular applications since it was in beta around 2015, so about 7 years or so. Live in North Carolina with my wife Kirsten and our 2 kids, Owen and Olivia. They keep us busy, but we love North Carolina. It's great to get out and kind of mountains on one way and beach another way. So we really like it here. But to go ahead and go on, what is NX? So NX is a build tool that's been created by the Narwhal team. It provides a pretty prescriptive way to organize monorepos. It uses static analysis to determine the dependencies between different parts of the application and their libraries that it could be dependent on. Um, Also, it creates the scaffolding that consists of the apps and libraries. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a workspace, and we'll take a look at some of the kind of things that were generated as part of the creation of the workspace. So why should we use it? One is it makes the builds much faster. So it's able to do this by using caching and uh, parallelization and remote execution. So since it knows the dependencies through static analysis, it's able to cache certain builds if nothing has changed, and it also can uh, it it can execute the task runner in a parallelized way as well as on different environments. So it does that remote execution for you. It's also made by a great team. Comprised the founders of Narwhal were Angular core members, Jeff Cross and Victor Slavin. Also, the team consists of some pretty popular library authors and Google developer experts. Another reason is it's got pretty high adoption, especially in the Angular community. There's lots of documentation online. Also, it's a plugin ecosystem, so it provides plugins for a whole gambit of different applications. You can create Next.js applications, Nest.js applications, React, of course, Angular, and just really a lot of different types of applications and libraries. Also, because it's pretty opinionated on how your code is structured, it gives us the guardrails that provide us to kind of write really maintainable code that we can reuse. And that is actually what we're going to be building today. We're going to go ahead and create a mono repository with two apps. One of them is going to be a web application, and another one is going to be an Ionic native application. With these, we're going to have 3 libraries that are going to share code between these two apps. Let me go ahead and get us started. So first thing I'm going to do, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to create a new folder. And then we're going to open this guy up in code. Definitely let me know through comments or something if you all need me to make my screen bigger. I'll try to zoom in as I remember to do so. So here's our directory that we just created. And to create a mono repository, they've got there is a package for us to do that. So we just type in, let me see if I can zoom in here. I'm not sure how to zoom in on this. Sorry, bear with me here.
You can try out just the control plus.
Oh.
Nope. If anyone knows, let us know.
I'm not sure how to zoom in on this one, but I'll try to talk through it as well. So it's npx create nx workspace, and we're going to go ahead and set our preset to an empty workspace. Okay, and then hit enter, and then it's going to ask us to proceed. Yes. We're going to give it a workspace name. I am not going to use the NX Cloud for now.
Paul, I've figured it out.
You did?
If you go to View up top.
Okay.
and then appearance, and then just hit zoom in there.
There we go.
It actually
Okay.
zooms in the entire view.
Command equals.
And
perfect.
If
There
you,
we
if
go.
you can
Thank
do
you.
that. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Let me see.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. So here it is. It's going ahead and it's building up our workspace. Should only take a couple of seconds. There we go. So now it built out our workspace. So let's take a look at what it created for us. So here we can see kind of the just the scaffolding. So since we put in an empty preset, then there's nothing in the apps folder. There's nothing in the libs folder. And some things that I'm going to point out here is our workspace.json. This is how NX knows about the different apps and libraries that you have. So whenever you generate a new application or library, it'll update this workspace.json file. The NX JSON has a lot of the build configurations and different options that NX uses to execute its tasks. Whenever we add certain things, then these things will be updated as well. So I am going to go ahead and install some packages. So one of them is going to be the Ionic Angular package, because we will be using Angular as our web framework. So let me just zoom this in a little more so maybe you can see. There we go. So hopefully this is going to be a little clear. So this is narwhal/Angular, and then we're going to go ahead and say that's our dependencies. And once this is done running, we'll go ahead and generate the application, our first Angular application. Okay, there we go. It's completely finished. So now let's go ahead and let's create our Angular application. So to do this, NX, their CLI has some built-in wrappers around the Angular CLI. So we can do things like, actually, you know what? I found something that I need to update to the latest NX. So let's go ahead and update to the latest NX. Because we're using the latest and greatest, there's some things that it wasn't allowing me to run. So you see, we've gone ahead and, oh, I'm actually in the wrong repository. Sorry about that. So here, this is where we want to update the new NX. I had to go into the actual workspace project. So here it's added 6 packages with the latest one. And so we can now create our application. So the command is narwhal/Angular. So we're using that package and we're going to generate an app. And we are going to call it marvel/web. Oh, I forgot to generate. So G. Okay, so generate command. We're going to say it is we're going to use SAS. We're going to say yes to routing. Required stack, TypeScript, workspace. Sorry. Oh, you know what? I think I probably have to delete my node module. Sorry. Let me try this again. All right, let's try this again. So this guy, resolve Angular at narwhal/Angular. What am I doing here? Let me do Let me run that npm install command again. Maybe I didn't get it there. Okay, it's up to date. Let me make sure it didn't create a new app. Okay, it didn't create the new app. So if we go ahead and up to date 33 packages, and we installed npm. Oh, you know what? I didn't install the package. Maybe / Angular. Did I? Okay. Yeah, I did not install the CLI package. So to use the generate command, you need to install the actual package. So let's go ahead and run that command again. So generate narwhal Angular app Marvel Web. We'll call this SaaS. Yes. Hopefully this will work better. There we go. When this builds out, we'll go ahead and take a look at some of the things that were scaffolded out on here. Let's take a look. Sorry, it's taking a little longer than expected. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead and take a look at what was created. So now we see two applications. One is the end-to-end integration tests. The other is the web app that we just created. When we look down here in our root directory, you'll see the workspace.json file. Now that's been updated with the two projects, the two apps that were created. And once we look in our NX file, you'll see that now it's updated the CLI to use by default the Angular CLI, and just some of the generators that we're going to be using as part of that. And one thing to note is here in our Angular application itself, we do not have an Angular JSON file. Instead, we have this project.json. And with this project.json, it is going to it looks a lot like the angular.json, where it's got the builds, it has the different assets and styles that we're going to be using in our application, any configurations, as well as like our commands to serve and that sort of thing. So it looks a lot like an Angular JSON file, but we put it in our, it gets generated in the project.json. And just to complete the loop here, we'll go ahead and just run our command to build it. So we can run nx serve and then call the project web, and then we'll just specify the open flag. And here is the application that comes out of the gate for NX. And I'm going to just run through a few more commands with us, just so we can kind of see how libraries are created. So to create your libraries, you would run an NX generate, and then we're going to create an Angular Angular library. So it's going to be use that same narwhal Angular package and call it a lib. And then it is going to, we'll call it, I don't know, Marvel shared lib. When we generate this, it's going to go ahead and inside of our libs folder, we're going to go ahead and see the shared lib along with that same project.json file that specifies just some configurations for this specific library. We have our index.ts, which is our interface to anything that calls into this lib, and it generates just a module file along with it. I am going to go ahead and create now our Ionic application. The plugin that is used with NX is called NX10 / Angular. But because of the kind of the newness of NX that we're using, there were some things with it that I couldn't that I could not get to work. So we're going to go ahead and go about actually hand getting the application to run by working around the plugin itself. But let me go ahead and install this guy. So this is npm install at nxtend /ionic -angular. Save that as a dev dependency. Okay, so we added a package. We are also going to npm install a couple of things for Ionic, and it is Ionic /Angular, and also at capacitor /core, and also at capacitor /iOS. So these are the things that are going to let us run our Ionic application. Capacitor is the build tool that's used to generate the projects from a web app to be able to be used in the native IDE, whether it's Xcode or Android Studio. So now we've created those packages. Let's go ahead and create our Ionic app. So this is the piece that we kind of have to sidestep the library that generates it. And the way we're going to do this is we're just going to go ahead and generate another app using Angular. So narwhal /Angular, and we'll call this one Marvel -Ionic. It is actually, sorry, it is an app, and that it's going to be called Marvel /Ionic. Configuration, we'll just say no, that's okay, since we're going to be overriding this with an Ionic app. So this now, if we look at our apps, it went ahead and it created our Ionic app. We need to instantiate it as an Ionic project. So the way we're going to do that is we're just going to cd into our apps directory. And then we are going to do Ionic start. It's an Ionic command to create that Ionic project. We are not going to use the wizard. This is an Angular application. We're going to call it Marvel -Ionic. So it's going to override our current project, our app. So yes, we want to override it. Now it's going to do the install of the Ionic project. And once it's through this, I'm just going to go ahead and do some prep work. We are going to need to copy our project.json file from our web app. and we are going to add it to our Ionic app. The reason we do that is because since we're sidestepping the kind of the generation of the application, it is actually creating an Angular app that NX really doesn't know about. So we are going to delete the angular.json file. We're going to add our project.json, and then we're just going to replace all of the marvel-web to marvel-ionic. Let me hit no here. Okay, so now here, this has been created. If we look here, it is going to have our Angular JSON that we talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that guy out. And we're going to add into this directory. Let me just stop my node processes here. A project.json file. And we are just going to paste our current project.json. We're going to do a control find, and we're going to replace anything that is marvel-web with marvel-ionic. And so let me take this, we'll just replace all of these. Okay, that's all of them. And another thing that we need to take a look at is since we just copied and pasted, there is a file here that's generated by the Ionic CLI that does not exist in the builder that NX comes with, and that is this styles.sass file. If we look here, it's actually using global.sass. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove that with global.sass. And one more thing to do is our output directory. Because the way Ionic works is when we do a build, in order for it to be opened in the native IDE, it looks for the build in the www directory. So now our output path from that dist folder, we're going to change that to www. So let's go ahead and let's try to get this to open in our native application. So first thing we'll do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to cd back to the root directory for NX. We're going to go ahead, I think I went back too far, so cd pmt. And then we're going to go ahead and build this project. So NX has that build command. It's going to be marvel-app -ionic. So we're going to try to generate these assets into the www directory.
Maybe we can do an ad break.
Ad break, yes. I need to delete. Sorry, I need to delete this node modules out of here.
And why is that happening? Why are you having to delete the node modules folder?
The node modules, it was trying to read the node modules from the Marvel Ionic directory when it should be using the node modules that's actually part of the NX workspace. I believe that's what it was doing. Because we're in a monorepo, all of the dependencies, I believe, should be shared through the one package.json. But because we had this kind of sidestep that, I think it was getting confused which builder to use in order to create that build. There we go. So it's successfully ran. So now we can go ahead and we can, we can run this just in web view. So if we do nx serve marvel-ionic with the open flag, it should be able to open up in a browser for us. And while this is running, I'm going to go ahead and just set up the being able to open it in IDE. So we'll CD into the actual project itself. Oh, the build beat me to it. So here is the kind of just the boilerplate Ionic app here. Let's go ahead and create it now, run it in the native IDE. So to do this, we'll go ahead and CD directly into the app itself. Oops, not PMT, but Marvel /-ionic. And here, what did I do? So this is demo CD, sorry, PMT dash slash Marvel apps slash Marvel dash ionic. Okay, so here we're going to need to add the iOS folder. So we're going to use capacitor to add the iOS directory, and this is going to add all of if we're using any plugin libraries to access native code. This is creating that directory for that. And so now when we look here, we can see inside of apps and Marvel Ionic, we now have an iOS folder as well as that www folder. And we can go ahead and run cap sync iOS, which is going to take our web application and put it into a directory that our native IDE can run. And then we can just do cap open iOS, which is going to go ahead and create and open it up in Xcode for us.
And it goes without saying this wouldn't work on a Windows machine, correct?
Correct. We can, it would work if we did Android, but Android only. iOS will not work on Windows. That is correct. So once this is finished processing, we'll go ahead and run it. We'll go ahead and use Pro Max, and then just execute this, and we should see the application. And so this was just kind of setting everything up, just showing how to create the two apps and maybe a library to run to be able to create a native application and a web application side by side within one repository. Sometimes iOS is taking its time to boot up here, but once that's there, then there you go. There is our native application. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to take a look at the code on kind of sharing between our different apps. So I've got a different repository that I've already created for that. That is going to be this repository. So if I go here, and this is, so let me go ahead and let me run the two applications. So what this application is we are calling the Marvel API service that gives us a list of Marvel characters, and then we get, we are also gonna be able to drill into each character and be able to see some details about that character. So I'm gonna go ahead and run here nx serve web, Marvel -web -o. And so with this is not the application that we just created. This is actually one that I've built out ahead of time. So just to be clear about that one. So now here we can see this is the web app. We have dynamic loading where it's making the HTTP calls, but it does so as we scroll on the page. Then we can click on a character. It's going to open it up. You can expand out these different sections and it'll tell us some comics that this character's been in, as well as some stories. This is all data that we're pulling from the Marvel API. So let's go ahead and let's now see what it looks like in our native editor, native IDE. So we'll go ahead and run nx build Marvel -ionic. This is going to build out that project, and I've already built this out. The build should be fairly quick. Okay, there we go. That build was super fast. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open it up in our editor, or in our native IDE. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cd into apps/marvel/ionic. Oops, with this with a C at the end. Apps. There we go. And then we're going to do just cap sync. I've already added the iOS project. So if we open this up, we can see this already has iOS directory. So I'm just going to sync it up with my latest build. Sync it up with iOS. And then we're going to go ahead and just open it up in our IDE. Let me bring this over. And so here we can just go ahead and run this. And now we can see same characters, just a little bit different view. We scroll down, it's going to go ahead and do the loading for us. We can click on a character. You can see this has the kind of the look and feel of a native device with the pop-up card. Then you can expand out some sections here just to get some metadata for them. So that is really our two apps. So let's go ahead and dig into the code of what it's doing. So first, we'll go ahead and take a look at our web project. So if I take this and I'm going to go ahead and close all these out for now. And we're going to go to our apps. So our web app, we'll take a look at our module file. You can see here, I'm just going to close this out for now. The things that we're importing. The things to note here is going to be we have our Marvel Apps shared module. When we are importing that from a library that we created called Marvel Apps Shared. And that will include some of the roots for, this is an NGRX application. So it's going to have it's going to register all of our NGRX root modules. So that's the thing to note about here. And if we look at our entry component, this has our toolbar. And then here we have we have our just whether or not we're going to show the spinner. And the reason we need to register the root is because we are getting that app state from our apps library, and we are just toggling whether or not to show that loader. And we'll look at that library in a little bit. Now, when we look at our routing module, you'll see that we are defaulting to the home route. So let's take a look at that module. So when we look at that module, let us see the different things that is being imported. Here we have another library, which is the home module. So we've now created we've looked at two different libraries that we have. One is the shared library, and this one is the home module library. This is these libraries are where our business logic is going to occur. And when we look at our HTML file, we see that the only thing we're doing here is we are iterating over our view model, which is going to be an observable, and the characters array that comes from that view model. So if you recall, when we looked at our component or our application, it had the list of different characters that we had. And so the way we're pulling that in is we have a view model for this screen. That view model is exported out as part of our home module. And if we look at that, we'll see that it includes a characters array and this scroll top number. This scroll top number is how we will look at the logic that actually sets this value, but it is to know whether or not we need to make that extra HTTP call to fetch more characters. So let's go back here. And here, what we're doing is we're just getting this view model from a web component state service that we are providing in the component itself. So this is kind of a poor man's component store. So I'm not using NGRX's component store, but it's very similar to that. And here is our module that we're importing that from. After viewing it, this is the logic that is going to go ahead and decide if we're going to fetch more characters through HTTP. And all we're saying is whenever the document scrolls, then we're going to go ahead and we are going to we're going to get the scroll number from the scroll event, and we're going to go ahead and call our state service to handle that scroll event. And then to not introduce memory leaks, we have a component destroyed. So you can see it's a pretty lean component. All it is it's consuming data, and then any interactions that is happening, we're calling out to a service to handle those interactions. Let's go ahead and take a look at our character detail. So with this, whenever, let's take a look at when this is getting created, is here on our click event for any of the different characters, we're going to call the component service to view character details, which once we look at it, we'll see that what that's doing is that's just routing to the character detail screen. So on the character detail screen, our module is going to be our third library. And that is going to be I'm sorry, we're not using a third library for this one. We're not registering it in the module because there is no, we don't need to import any components or state store for this module. But we will be using the library for injecting a separate view model as well as its own component state service. And so this component state service, this is just building out our details model, which is, if we take a look at that, it's just the character that we selected. We could have passed that in through the route, but just to kind of show kind of the different logic that's happening, we're just using, we're going to use it in the state store.
We have a question, Paul.
Yeah.
On destroy, do we need to complete the observable?
We do, because we are we're binding to an HTML event. So I do not believe binding to an HTML event is auto-completing. It's not just going to be an HTTP call. So if we go ahead and take a look at this component again, the observable that we're creating is from the scroll event. And so the reason I was I was doing the take until to destroy to complete that observable is in the case where this component is destroyed and then reinstantiated. I believe what it's going to do is going to create a new observable. Since we're not using here, we don't need to do that because we're using async pipe for Angular. And so it handles the creation and the destruction of, or the completion of that event stream. Whereas we're subscribing here to an event, so that I do not believe that that stream is completed automatically. Does that make sense?
Yep. And please, if anyone has further questions, leave them in the chat.
Yes. Good question. So let's go ahead and take a look at the skit. So here, all we're doing is these are all just the different expansion panels that we had for comics and series and that sort of thing. And all we're doing here is we are taking that character that comes in from our view model and we're setting the data for it. If we look at our component again, very lean, all it has is going to call our state service to go ahead and get the view model. So this is really just the UI piece of it. And now we can look at our different libraries. So when we look at our libs, we'll look at the shared one first. So this is one that is, I named it shared because it is not only going to live within our modules, but this can be shared between modules. And the things that we're exposing here is if we look, we have our API service that can be used, wherever, our HTTP service, which is going to be used by our libs to make our HTTP calls. These are the different interfaces that we have. This is the selector that we used in our apps component. This is going to be what registers our store modules. These are some selectors that we have in our state store, and this is also this is the selector for getting the entire app state, the root state. So when we look at here, this is the shared module that we export out. We can see that this is doing the registration of our state store, and this is allowing us to take that registration and be consumed by our app that's consuming this library. So since we are exporting these out, then we don't need to specify these the registering on our application itself. This module is doing it. This library is doing it for us. Now let's take a look at the different actions. Our actions, and Dohan, let me know if I'm going over on time here. I'm going to try to, if I've got 10 more minutes.
Yeah, about 10 more minutes. It's pretty
okay.
good.
Okay, cool. And so here we only have two actions. One is to show the loader, and one is to, if there's any type of error message. We'll take a look at our effects. Now we're only listening for one effect, and that is whenever this action is dispatched, it can be dispatched in our different libraries, which we'll see later. And all we're doing is we're saying, just show an alert that says that there was an error. Dispatch false, because we don't want to make our browser mad at us. So with effects, effects, it expects an observable and it outputs an observable, which is going to be an action. Now, since this one is not actually returning anything, then we need to be able to say, okay, our application is not listening for any action coming from from this effect whenever this action is dispatched. So we're just going to go ahead and say, don't listen for anything whenever this effect runs.
We have another question.
Sure.
Do you always create a view model per component, even if only you have one public property in the component?
I personally do, just because it to me it kind of is it helps with any time that there is going to be maybe more properties added. So it just provides consistency within our components. We technically don't have to do it, but I personally do. And if I want to combine like it into one view model, then I will do that on the service level. Just for maintainability, I find it easier to kind of to create just that one view model for the component. And if anything is added, then just add it to the view model later.
Thank you.
So let's take a look at our reducer. So our reducers are just taking that whenever this action is dispatched, then we set the whether or not to show the spinner, and same thing with error message. So all that's pretty straightforward. Let's now take a look at our services. So this is the shared module. So our HTTP service is just going to go ahead, and the only places that this HTTP service is called is through an effect. I try to make it a habit never to call an HTTP service from a component or a service itself. The only time I will call something that is going to be an HTTP call is usually done through an effect, since it's a side effect of the application. This is the load characters HTTP call. And then this is going to be get the next batch of characters, which is going to take in that current offset number that we saw from the scroll top number. And so that's how we know what the offset is going to be, which is the next batch that we're going to call. Now let's take a look at our different models on here. So these are just some of the responses, the responses that's coming back from the HTTP call. And then these are just things that this URL types actually use as part of this character response. So if we look at this, it's got results, which is going to have the array of characters, and then that array of characters has all the data for that HTTP response. And that is the shared module. So the next module is going to be our home module. And this is actually where the bulk of the sharing of data work happens. So let's go ahead and take a look. If we recall, each component had its own state service. When we look at here, we see that state service, that home state service. We have a web one and we have an ionic one. And then we also have this state service that is kind of just living outside of those two directories. And so the way we're sharing the code is this state service is actually an abstract class. So it is not anything that we're exporting out through the library, but instead, anything that implements this class is going to be we're going to be able to call into it to get these methods. So when we look at this, the view model for both our web application and our ionic application, they're both have the same view model. They both have characters within it. So, and also need to know when to actually fetch data. So the logic to build that view model is actually here in this method. So whenever we call, like, say, the web state service, there's no get view model method here. That is getting executed on the abstract class, since there's really no change. That the view model is going to be the same. We're pulling it from the same places. We can go ahead and just execute the code on the abstract class itself. And now this method can be shared between our Ionic app and our web app. The same thing with the scroll event. We call this scroll event from both our Ionic app and our web app, but it's in essence doing the same thing. It's saying, okay, should I fetch more records? And the way I check that is I need to check the scroll event to see where we are on the screen. If it's less than our updated scroll, then we're going to go ahead and update our scroll tip, our scroll top to the new scroll item. And then we are going to dispatch an action that says get our next batch of characters. So when we go back to our concrete implementations of this, this is the web component service that we created, that we inject into our web component. And the only thing on here is view character details. And the reason that's here is because we need to specify if we need to route to a new route or just open up the card that comes, that's a part of the Ionic application. If we now look at our Ionic state service, it's going to be pretty much the same, where this is going to dispatch an action and set the mobile is true. And we need to know the current character because we didn't our card is dependent on this. So if we look at our Ionic character component, here we can see our character component has another, let me move this over. It has another object in it, which is our current characters. We could have extended out our home view model to include this current characters, but instead I decided to just add it as a property to this component itself. I think either way would be okay. But for now, this is the way I did it. And I'm now just calling that method on our Ionic state service to get that current character. This is the scroll this is the same kind of logic to call that handle scroll event, and then the same destroy. And the reason they live in the same component is because our component here has our list of items, and then we're doing inline modals. Ionic has a way to do it inline or to have a modal controller that'll create this for you. The documentation says, when possible, you try to use the inline modals. So that's what I'm doing here. Is we're saying whenever when an item is clicked, then we're going to go ahead and present the modal, and then this modal is going to go ahead and just show that card that has all the character data on it. Got maybe just the last thing, Dohan, just to show is our.
I don't have an orchestra ready to play you off, so you can take a few more minutes.
Okay. The last thing here is just showing our index. So if we look at what is actually exported as part of this library, we have that home module, which is going to include our feature state store. So when we look at our home module, we register our feature state store for home and our effects module. So those are the things there. And then we're also exporting out only the web component state service and the Ionic state service. We are not exposing out our home state service, our abstract class, because we're not calling that from outside of this library. And then we have our selector here that we're exporting out as well. I think that's it. That's kind of what I got.
Awesome, thank you so much. And
Yeah,
do you have this repository available on GitHub?
I do. I will, can I share that with you after, or do you want me to put it on the comments?
Yeah, I think the comments would be great for folks joining in or watching this video later.
Perfect. I'll add it on here.
Okay. Thank you so much, Paul.
Absolutely.
What was the latest Marvel movie you've seen?
So I watched the last one I watched was the new Spider-Man one. I have not seen Doctor Strange yet. This is mostly for my son. He loves Marvel, and I'm incorporating it so that in order for him to use it, he has to also solve some math problems or something. So it's kind of, he's already told me there's some bugs in it, but that's
Nice. That's very good. Yeah, I've been trying to teach my daughter some programming. She's 8, using Quick Basic. That's how I learned way back in the day, and I like the simple kind of mental model of the tool. All right, so I do have my randomizer here, and let me just confirm that I've everybody who messaged. Yep. All right. And then I guess, yeah, if you can submit that repo link, that would be appreciated, Paul.
Yes.
And Rainbow Bunny is asking for separating business logic from UI. When should I use libraries versus classes? With static methods versus exported JS functions?
It's a good question. So I typically use classes unless it's a type of utility, So if it's something that doesn't need to be, say, injected into a component itself, then that's where I would use a function, just an export function instead of using a class itself. Usually that's my differentiators. If it can be no side effects and not needed to be injected, then I'll try to use a function.
All right. Thank you. All right, and we have our results. Dev Crew, you want a Quokka license, and Rainbow Bunny, you want a Wallaby license. Please DM me on Twitter at Deluca. I just put that in the chat, and I will share the license with you. And all right, with that, we have come to the end of our meetup. Paul, thank you so much for your awesome talk. And
Thank you.
And would love to see you again sometime in the future.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks,
All
Dylan.
right. Well, have a great day.
I sent the that link on private chat for you. That maybe you can.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll just paste it on the YouTube chat right here. And thanks everyone joining us live here. And all right.
All right.
Have a great day.
Thanks so much.